Just beginning, Richard, just wanted to ask you, what are some of the trends you think are going to make a big impact in the next 3 to 5 years from a healthcare perspective?
Yeah, thanks. It's a delight to be here, and good to join you both on this panel. I think as you say, there's a lot of interesting things developing in the space, and have been over the last few years. What we've seen, particularly in the last 2 years, is just a massive acceleration. People talk about 10 years of development in 10 months. For me, my background, my company is Fundamental VR. We're all about focusing on the use of immersive technology for education and training and skills assessment. And what we've seen there is the move from people thinking about this as a potential technology for use to a inevitable technology for use and implementing it at scale. So that for us is really exciting. I think alongside that you've seen transformation in areas of digitization with patients. So again, forced by factors around COVID, but now allowing people to consult through their mobile devices, through their virtual devices, accelerate the speed of interaction in a way that's not been possible before, and all of this against a backdrop of the implementation of understanding through machine learning and often overused, but AI, starting to be able to interpret the information coming in a way that means, again, from a patient perspective, from a healthcare provider perspective, the dial moves better, it's more efficient, it's more effective.
Absolutely. I think the AR, VR is going to revolutionize how we teach people, and we'll get into that a bit more, and then also talk about metaverse, that's the word, and NFTs as well. But Pranav, healthcare, the 3 things everybody's trying to do, right, is reduce cost, improve outcomes, and accessibility. Talk a little bit about what you're doing and how that impacts the 3 key factors that are driving healthcare.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I feel so honored to be part of this panel discussion. According to a WHO report in 2018, 15% of the whole world population has some form of disability. But to put it in perspective, there should be at least about 5,000 to 7,000 people who have some sort of disability right in this conference itself.
Wow.
But you don't find that.
Right.
The major reason is this is one aspect where we are not actually, for generations there hasn't been much of intent to work in this domain. So what we are, and the problem is there are very advanced technologies working in this sector, but they are not accessible for a lot of people, primarily because they are not affordable. So what we are interested is in actually building these technologies at an affordable price so that they are accessible for majority of the population. So as a part of that, we built Kalam, which is the first bionic hand of India, which is about 10 times more affordable than any other bionic hands that are available, and yet which is one of the most advanced bionic hands in the world.
No, amazing, Pranav. I think you're doing a lot of good, because I have a friend who had a bad cycling accident. Now he's paraplegic all the way down from the neck. So I'm sure this advances is going to help him a lot. Richard, coming back, metaverse, and do you think the advent of the AR, VR, the medical tourism will go away? And how do we train the future doctors so they're comfortable with this technology? Because a lot of the doctors, they're still learning how to type, at least the senior ones.
Yeah, I think there is a generational thing there for sure. What we see is in the kind of the sub-40, younger than me, but the sub-40 bracket, there's a lot more readiness to embrace some of this new technology than you see perhaps in some of the later stages. That's a problem that will fix itself over time, so right. that doesn't worry us. What we certainly see is that when you start to bring the ability to remove rehearsal and learning from a human and put it into a virtual space, you have immediate benefits. The most obvious one is we're no longer practicing medicine on people. We are refining our skills in a controlled environment and then applying those to the human environment. And I call that pre-human competence. And that's really what we're all about trying to create. So if you talk about the metaverse, and it is a highly used phrase at the moment, where does that take us? Well, I firmly believe, just as we've seen in aviation, you can't be a commercial pilot, sit at the front of a plane and take 400 lives into the air unless you can prove in a simulation that you can do it and you can deal with the adverse outcomes. And I think that's the trajectory for medicine. I think it's certainly the trajectory for surgery. And I think that's a small part of where the metaverse will start to explode. It already exists without the name, as I said, within environments such as ours, and it will just start to propagate out further and further. And then you can take that immersive capability beyond just education. You can take it into ongoing assessment. So again, if you look around the world, you look at how doctors, surgeons, practitioners are assessed on an ongoing basis, it's pretty primitive. It rarely involves skills assessment. It's normally case file assessment and looking at theory. And again, providing the opportunity to do hands-on rehearsal, refinement, assessment, and continue to do that on an ongoing basis. Not once every 10 years, but once every week.
Right.
That, I think, is the opportunity that this kind of metaverse offers for us, and this whole immersion capability can deliver.